you listen to reason? Will you open your eyes? It's a wonder what you'll find with an open mind. You may be surprised. Yeah, gotta get away from this illusion. For the sake of the world, this delusion. It's gotta go.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Atheist Experience. I am your host, Russell Glasser, and with me today in his first round as official rotating co-host is John Iacoletti.
Hi, how you doing? Good to be back.
That's the Italian way, right?
That's the Italian way.
Jeff D., who I know is a very popular co-host, he's decided to take a break from this show for a while, but you can still hear him every other week as the host of The Nonprofits, which you all should be listening to also. And John here, you're going to be seeing a lot more of him. So welcome.
Thank you.
Today is Sunday, February 23rd, 2014. We are a live call-in public access atheist television show based in Austin, Texas, dedicated to promoting positive atheism and the separation of church and state. We're available through live streaming video at ustream.tv. The official Atheist Experience website is www.atheist-experience.com. You can provide feedback to us by commenting on the official show blog. That's freethoughtblogs.com/AXP. You can also email us at tv@atheist-community.org. If you enjoy the show today, please check out our related podcasts, The Nonprofits, which I just mentioned, and Godless Bitches, which I am led to believe is back in action. So check that out with Beth Presswood, Tracy Harris, and Jen Peoples. The Nonprofits is currently airing on a regular schedule the first and third Wednesday of every month, and you can listen to us live or you can wait a couple of days for the audio to be uploaded. As always, the cast and crew of the Atheist Experience will be going to dinner after the show, although we're in flux right now. Today we're not going to Threadgills. We're going to our old haunt of El Arroyo at 1624 West 5th Street. There's the address on the TV machine. And you, I don't know, keep watching the show to see when we're going to be meeting each week, because unfortunately right now we haven't decided for sure where to stick with. Today is February 23rd, as I mentioned, and this happens to be the National Day of Solidarity for Black non-believers, and we at the Atheist Experience would like to express that solidarity. I'm going to read a short description from the African Americans for Humanism website. The percentage of black non-believers in the U.S. is small but increasing. Most have difficulty meeting other black non-believers or finding who are involved in secular organizations. The internet has made many connections possible. However, the common feelings expressed by black non-believers are those of isolation, loneliness, and alienation. Often, the remedy for these feelings is activism. The Day of Solidarity for Black Non-Believers, DOS, held annually on the fourth Sunday in February, must be embraced beyond the events that take place in cities across the nation on that day. It must be used to build genuine communal relationships. It must be used to launch a wave of activism among blacks in America and other people of color as we strive to openly embrace our non-theist status in an ethical and dignified manner. If you'd like to find more about the National Day of Solidarity, I believe their main page is on Facebook. So look up Day of Solidarity for Black Non-Believers there. John, how are you today?
I'm doing well. I was watching the video, a little bit of the video from the last time I was on, and realized that a whole bunch of the time I'm like all squinty and it occurred to me that these bright lights I've been aiming at the rest of you all these years are bright.
Oh, we've gotten used to it. But also, people are going to be critical of you like they're critical of all of us. And it gets actually very easy very quickly. So, don't be nervous.
I'll try not to be. But I'll try not to be quite so squinty this time.
Right.
So bear with me.
You'll do great.
Thanks.
Anything on your mind today?
Well, I wanted to just follow up a little bit. The last time I was on, I talked about how I was raised in the Unitarian Universalist Church, and I thought I'd come back and just give a really brief kind of overview of that, because we do get some email from people. Oh, I've heard that a lot of atheists go to UU churches. What's that all about? So Unitarian and Universalism really arose as two.
Excuse me a minute. I have to hang up on Corey in Schenectady. Not talking to him.
Bye, Corey. Two Christian heresies. So Unitarianism was God is one, not three, and that was kind of settled back at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. But my mom, who went to seminary, used to tell me that they actually fought each other with brickbats. God is one. No, God is three. God is one. God is three. God is three ended up winning, but Unitarianism kind of persisted throughout the centuries into modern times. Universalism, on the other hand, was the idea that nobody goes to hell, that there's universal salvation, and that also was considered a heresy. And Universalism, I'm told, was actually the largest denomination in the United States in the 19th century, and those were the years when Ingersoll was traveling around giving lectures to packed audiences, and their numbers dwindled in the 1900s. And so they followed separate paths. Unitarianism was real big in the Northeast and Massachusetts in particular. Excuse me. So they ended up merging in excuse me. They ended up merging in 1961 and became the Unitarian Universalist Association. As far as the church goes, they have no creed, and that's why a lot of atheists end up in UU churches. There's no creed or statement of beliefs. They have instead what they call 7 principles and purposes that the congregations agree to affirm and promote, and those are things like we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, for example. But since there's no creed, you'll find liberal Christians in UU churches, you'll find atheists and humanists, you'll find Buddhists, you'll find earth-centered spirituality like paganism and Wicca.
I spent a few years of my childhood growing up in Auburn, Alabama, where there was certainly no atheist group, but my parents took me to a Unitarian church, and it was a fine substitute. I made a lot of friends there.
Yeah, and so that's an opportunity for community. So it's sort of a tolerant amalgam of people with different belief systems, and it's very much a church in the sense of having regular church services, and I think so. If you ask why would an atheist might want to go to a UU church, some people just want the church experience. They want to sing hymns, and they want to get together, and they want to drink coffee afterwards and socialize, and they want to hear some kind of inspiring message, which could be a sermon or it could sort of be a lecture. It really depends on the church and the day. For example, I used to sing in the choir, and I enjoyed that a lot. And when ACA gets a choir, I'll be right there.
I can't wait to preach to them.
Yeah, there you go. Sometimes spouses might have, you might have an atheist married to a Christian or a Jew, or somebody who's different belief systems, or a Christian and a Jew, or any combination of the above. A lot of spouses who differ in their religious beliefs might end up at a UU church because they want to find a place they can go together without having to kind of pretend they're somebody they're not. One big reason is religious education for children. They have a good religious education program. A lot of people want their kids to learn about other religions in kind of a non-biased fashion to sort of inoculate them against society, because we live in a religious society, and it helps to kind of be religiously literate. So, you know, the old joke goes, what do you call an atheist with children? A Unitarian Universalist. And, you know, but as I mentioned...
Not necessarily true.
Not necessarily true.
Same as the atheists in foxholes canard.
Yeah, exactly.
But, yeah.
I think it was more so in the 50s and 60s. There were a lot of atheists in UU churches, and they've kind of diversified since then. And then the last reason I want to plug, because I was an OWL teacher for 10 years when I was at UU, and OWL is a comprehensive sexuality education program that that the Unitarian Universalist Church does, which they developed in cooperation with the United Church of Christ, which is another it's a very liberal Christian denomination. And that's really a top-notch program, especially if you live in the South or in a place where the sex education where the sex education in the schools is kind of fear and shame based, or non-existent, and they have a really good program. And so even if you don't want to go to the church, you might want your kids to be involved with that.
Sure.
So, so that's kind of a very brief overview, but that's kind of, and that's mostly off the top of my head. So if you know, if I missed something, feel free to write in and correct us.
All right. Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Ready to go to some callers? We've got Ron in San Diego. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good, and you?
Pretty good.
Hi, Ron.
Yeah, I have a couple of atheist friends, and I'm noticing a contradiction. Like, they say that, I have a friend, he said he's willing to stick to the truth as far as the belief in God. Like, he would, no matter what a Christian says, he would say that God is not real, right? Regardless of how the Christian feels.
Right, sure.
But if a transsexual feels, I mean, if a transgender male feels like he's a woman, my atheist friend would embrace that. And so, on one hand, he's embracing a delusion that this man is really a woman, and he says it's the way the transgender feels. It has nothing to do with evidence. It's the way the transgender feels. But when it comes to Christians, as far as the way they feel, they don't want to embrace it. And I don't understand, if they're all about reality, why when it comes to transgenders and gay people, it's all about the way they feel, and they embrace the way they feel regardless of evidence?
Well, first of all, Ron, when you say that the Christian God exists, that's a very specific claim about the nature of reality, right? Like, if I said that I could jump up in the air and fly around like Superman, you would be skeptical of that, I assume.
Yes.
Do you agree that, you know, the existence, that God existing or not existing is a very precise claim about reality?
Yeah, I'm an atheist, by the way.
Oh, you are?
I'm an atheist, so I know what you're saying. But if a man is clearly a man, and there is no evidence that the man is a woman other than the way he feels, then that's pretty clear also.
Well, the idea
okay,
first of all, you're not Charlie Checkham, are you?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Bye. Okay, so I'm going to monologue about this because Charlie Checkham is not, in general, welcome on the show. Yeah, the thing about gender identity is that the concept of gender identity is actually a very fluid idea to begin with. I mean, yeah, there is the specific issue of sex where, as a kid told Arnold Schwarzenegger, boys have a penis, girls have a vagina. But the identification that people choose to go with in society, like the idea that that boys wear pants and girls wear dresses, that boys like blue and girls like pink. There's a big distinction that's made often between sex and gender, where sex is intended to mean the biological state of, let's say, having two X chromosomes or an XY chromosome. But the thing about gender identity is that it is, it is essentially a social imposition. And the thing about being friends with people and getting along with your fellow human beings, assuming that you have any friends, which is not an assumption that I make about a guy like Charlie Checkham. But the ability to get along with people in general means that to a certain extent you accept the kinds of things that they identify as important about themselves. Like, for instance, pretty recently I received an email asking, like, can you prove your name is John, for instance? My point to someone asking a Christian like that is that your name is, to begin with, a fairly arbitrary social construct. My sister, who used to be on this show a long time ago, was born with the birth certificate that says Karen. Her name is Karen. She decided at a certain point in her life that she wanted to spell her name Keryn. She had her name legally changed, and everybody spells it that way. It was her decision to make. Similarly, if a person who happens to have a penis feels like he would like to wear dresses and be referred to as her, there is no major cost, and there is no scientific fact that would prevent this kind of social convention from being used instead of the assumptions that people generally make based on your biology. John, have you got anything to add to that?
No, that was well stated.
Okay.
And there's even more nuance with that too. There's sex and there's gender identity and there's sex roles, and it's a lot more complicated than you have an XY, you're a boy and you're deluded. I mean, which is what Charlie, what did he call himself? Wrong.
Charlie Checkham, also evolved atheist.
Yeah.
The guy who's been kicked out of just about every atheist forum in existence because he's really annoying and stupid.
Yeah, and he's real homophobic and
Yep.
Doesn't represent most atheists.
Sorry to sit here and talk about him off air, but he is called over and over again, and we're not really going to sit through another conversation with him.
Well, and don't call under a fake name and try to get past the call screener. But yeah, it's not a delusion. It's the transgender woman is a woman, and she may be biologically male, but she's a woman, and I wouldn't call that a delusion. And like you were pointing out, we're not basing laws on the fact that somebody's gender identity is male or female or what it is. We're not, passing laws that interfere with other people's freedoms.
Right. And there are a lot of things that people kind of assume have objective reality, but turn out not to when you examine them closer. Like, for instance, my friend Guy P. Harrison has written a book on race in which he argues that the concept of there being specific races is generally a myth. And if you look deeply into it, like for instance, a lot of supposed black people have much sorry, I feel like I'm not saying this right, but a lot of people who identify with one specific race or another are actually more closely related to a race that they wouldn't identify with. But ultimately, we're all part of the same species, and race very much is or should be like irrelevant, and is in a lot of cases socially imposed as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we've beaten that horse to death. Susan in Chicago.
Hello?
Hi.
Hi, Susan.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Good. I wanted to talk about how y'all bring up extraordinary claims and how they require extraordinary evidence all the time. And I just personally feel that, that statement often said in the show is just a cop-out. It's really just a personal opinion, I think. And what gives y'all the right to require such things when people bring up these, claims?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because did you know I rose from the dead one time?
See, you're just doing that to make fun and stuff like
Wait a
that.
minute,
You
so-
know you're not actually serious.
Well, why don't you believe me?
Because I know that you're doing that just to try to prove a point.
How do you know?
You're actually... Because that's the whole reason why you said that.
Well, so if I said I had dinner at a restaurant last night, would you believe that?
Well, of course, that's just normal conversation, so of course I
So
should.
what's the difference between that and me saying I rose from the dead?
Well, that is specifically something that is, defining a religion, and these other things we're saying just to bring up for an argument. We're not actually saying that this is the basis for a large religion like.
Well, why does that have to be about religion? Can't I just say that I rose from the dead? I mean, can't you just accept that at face value?
Well, I'm not using that, to define and represent, millions of people out there.
Neither am I. I'm just saying I rose from the dead.
Well, that's just a silly argument. I mean, I understand.
I
that
agree with
statement.
you. I'm just trying to get at why it's a silly argument.
Well, I understand that statement was originally said by Carl Sagan, but who really cares about, them requiring extraordinary claims and evidence?
So then you should believe I rose from the dead. Okay. I terrified her with my awesome logic.
Apparently. I don't know if that was a prank or not, but
I'm pretty sure it was.
But the point is that things that don't happen every day are extraordinary claims, and if you want to believe that, that's fine. But if you want other people to take your word for it that it actually happened, you're going to have to come up with something more.
Right. If you were serious. And I mean, while that caller was probably not serious, she was probably asking a question that would be seriously posed by a lot of Christians. Maybe. I don't know if it would be put in exactly that way. Harsha in New York.
Hey guys, so I have a couple of points to make, but before I do that, I just want to touch on the transsexual thing and about trolls, because I've been listening to this. So about transgender, I think is a more appropriate term.
Right.
So the thing is, the medical community supports them, right? You have the American Psychiatric Association,
Okay.
you have the Medical Association. So we have people who are experts in psychiatry and psychology and neuroscience supporting the rights of the transgender community as well as the gay community and the rest of the LGBT. So my point just simply is that it's not the same thing, because you don't, this is different from a belief in God, Just a quick addendum, just to add on to your point.
Okay,
The second
thanks.
thing
Yeah, good
Sorry?
point.
Yeah. So the second thing about trolls, just to address any troll. So I'm an atheist. I'm not a troll, but if there is any troll that's listening, I just think it's interesting that you had to come up with the best you can do is come up with fake arguments. Then you're not convincing anybody, right? The point is to convince people, and you're not doing that if you're just messing around.
There are people. I mean, the people who call us and act like idiots are not trying to convince people of anything.
Right.
They are just excited to hear themselves talking on TV because
Right.
they have so little interesting going on in their life that they have to resort to that.
Right. I'm just because I have a YouTube channel and I get tons of trolls and stuff. But my thing is that when I talk to trolls, I'm like, hey, you're welcome to do this, but just know that you're wasting your time. You're not convincing anybody, and I am, because I have serious arguments. and you don't. So you can waste your time as much as you like. But in any case, the reason I called in, so there's a couple of arguments. I never really heard that much by atheists. So I just wanted to talk about them. So one of them is that there's an inherent contradiction, I think, between when a Christian, a fundamentalist Christian, says that the morality that we get is absolutist morality, is from God, right? It originates with God and absolutely moral, right? And there's a contradiction with that and the justification they have for slavery and rape in the Bible, right? Like, so you can't have both, right? You can believe in one or the other, but I never seen an argument where they're addressing both at the same time, right? Because if God is absolutely first to say do not lie, and obviously lying is hard, right? If he can say something absolute about something like lying, then why can't he do that about slavery? Why can't he do that about rape in the Bible? Why is context important when you're talking about rape and you're talking about slavery, but context is not important when you're talking about lying? So I just would love to see fundamental Christian address that argument. And I was wondering what you guys thought about that.
You want to say something about
yeah,
that?
good point.
Right.
I don't really look at the Bible and see absolute morality in there. I think, people will say that, but
Right.
it's all over the place. And people really don't follow the rules in the Bible,
Right.
all of them, unless it's something
Absolutely.
they want to do anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that generally you'll find that Christians are coming from the starting point that, one of their axiomatic principles is that the Bible has to be absolutely correct about everything.
Right.
And then, they work from there. So when somebody calls and we say, justify why I should believe that the stuff in the Bible is true, a lot of times that gets very confused replies because that's not the kind of thing that they think you need to justify.
Right.
And because they believe that stuff, it gives them an incentive to look for a whole bunch of excuses about how, the slavery that's described in the Bible is very different from, let's say, Southern slavery 100 years ago. And they'll go into all these justifications about how great it was that the ancient Jews treated their slaves very nicely.
Right.
And dismiss parts of the Bible as just metaphorical and stuff like that. Anything that they can use. Because if you're starting from the position that the Bible is always right,
Right.
you're not going to reason toward the stuff in the Bible. You're going to take the Bible as a starting point and reason around it, let's say.
Right. Right, exactly. You're right. Another thing I want to address was, you guys ever hear about the prophecy of Tyre? I just never hear any atheists talking about this, but I think it's the best thing in the world.
What?
You guys know what I'm talking about? Ezekiel 21.
Yeah, something about Tyre would not last.
Yeah,
it would be burned to the ground or something like that.
Yeah, right. It's like Nebuchadnezzar would come in and it would burn Tyre to the ground, and it would never be rebuilt, and they would have fishing nets and stuff on there. And I love this because obviously it didn't come true because you can look at Tyre and satellite images existing right now. So even if it was destroyed, it was rebuilt, and the excuses they have for it is hilarious. I was reading this one apologetics website, and they were saying how, the old Tyre wasn't rebuilt, a new Tyre was rebuilt, so that's prophecy fulfilled. And I just thought that was hilarious. I don't know.
You don't have to go back that far. I mean, just look at 2011 when Harold Camping was predicting the end of the world, and then
Right.
the world didn't literally end, but it was it was a spiritual end of the world.
Right.
There's always an excuse if you
Right.
want to say it's infallible. They're going to find a way to try to make it infallible.
Right.
And the thing about Jesus saying that the people listening to me will, I'm not going to get the quote right, but I will return within the lifetimes of the people here today.
Right.
And
he has it.
Yeah, and they explain that as being spiritual lifetimes or
Or
lifetime
some of them some of them say, well, there's this really old guy who's still around, who's not dead yet.
I never heard this.
No, I've heard that that's a thing that they say sometimes as excuses.
I love prophecy and how they like twist themselves in the pretzel, explaining it. And this happens in Hinduism too. I'm a former Hindu. It happens all the time in all religions, and it's really funny.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, all right. I just wanted to see what you guys thought about that stuff, and great show. Keep
All
looking.
right.
Thanks, Harsha. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Bye bye.
Bye. Justin in New Haven, Connecticut.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Fine.
Yeah, I'm good. I was calling about the anti-theist position.
Okay.
The belief that there
I'm
is
sorry,
no God.
Yeah, the belief that there is no God.
Okay.
That assertion. First, I want to make a qualification and say that I do like the atheist position. I like the intellectual consistency of saying, there's not enough evidence to support the claim that a God does in fact exist. But I also feel like if we do take the burden of proof on our shoulders, not saying that you have to, but if we do take it on our shoulders, I do believe that there is enough logical reasoning and proof out there to provide us with the amount of proof to represent that position.
Okay.
And one of the things I wanted to say was I was watching Eric Hovind, and one of the things he does right away when he sees somebody in order to play his little word game is he says, do you think that it is in fact impossible for the God of the Bible to exist? And then the atheist, because of his intellectual consistency, says, well, anything's possible, but it's unlikely. I think you can answer that question, yes, through any definition of the word impossible that we can really think of. Because, first of all, in order for something to exist, it must exist within space and time. And the God of the Bible necessarily exists outside of space and time.
Stop right there.
Okay.
How do you know?
Okay. How do I know? Because the word existence consists of the things in existence. The universe is the only thing that we can conceive of that exists.
It's the only
Because
thing where...
space and
wait a
time-
minute. It's the only thing we're aware of that exists. How do you know there's not a different
Right.
universe?
Well, a different universe would still be a different space and time, and it still would be a space and time. And if a deity or a being of
Okay.
of a different universe created us, it's not a god by
What
anybody's
you're...
sense of the
Okay,
word.
I'm sorry, but what you're saying right now is not justified by current scientific understanding. I mean,
Okay.
we
I'm sorry,
know...
explain.
We know what happened back to the Planck time in the universe, but
Yes.
prior to a certain period of time, the laws of physics are so basically different in that singularity that there is no knowing the nature of the stuff that came before it.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Yeah, there's no
the-
knowing.
the
For
point-
instance,
okay.
let's say, for the sake of argument, that the
All right.
Matrix is true, and
Yes.
that there's this grand programmer who made this perfect world simulation in a universe which isn't ours and is perfectly simulating the universe. That's,
But that wouldn't be God. That would just be another being.
well, I mean, it depends on how far you're willing to stretch the definition of God.
Yeah, I'm going with the God of the Bible because that's pretty much the question that's asked. I guess you could come up with some deistic being that was the creator if you want to, but
Okay, but I mean, when you go so far as to say the only thing that can exist has to exist in space and time, I think you're making an absolute assertion that I'm not even sure I, as an atheist, should accept.
well, what I'm saying is in some space and time. Because without
Okay.
space,
How do you
can't
know
be
that
present. And without time, you don't exist for any amount of time.
All right, I hate that you're making me argue the Christian position, by the way.
I'm sorry.
But I've gotta.
Okay, go ahead.
How do you know that God doesn't just exist in some other space and time? Is that totally inconsistent with the Bible?
Yes.
Why?
That is inconsistent because the Bible's God is omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, and eternal.
Maybe he's just all those
And-
things with respect to this universe.
Well, if that's the case, then I guess I guess you're really stretching the God of the Bible there. I don't think
I guess
that's what
I am.
any person in the God of
Sorry.
the Bible thinks.
Sorry about that.
Well, I understand you're just doing an exercise here, and I get what
Kind
you're
of,
saying.
but I don't. I mean, I take the atheist position and the agnostic atheist position specifically for a reason, which is that I do not like to say I'm certain about stuff that is not justified. Now, I do think that the lack of evidence for God is so complete that within my current understanding of knowledge, I'm as confident to dismiss the God of the Bible as I would be to dismiss that, like, Darth Vader is out there somewhere. Maybe more.
Yeah.
So I'm with
think
you there,
one thing.
But I think when a guy like Eric Hovind says, can you be absolute 100% infallibly certain that there is no God, I think no is the only honest answer.
I also agree with that in a certain sense because that's I guess in the exact word of impossible, I guess so. But what I'm trying to say is these guys play with words so much, and then they'll say, well, just the same thing they do with the word theory.
Right.
And you
got to call them out on that.
What we should think of as impossible.
Yeah, and you got to call them out on that. You got to draw attention to the fact that they're not really saying anything meaningful. And I'm totally with nailing Eric Hovind on, on his gibberish way of bouncing around and trying to believe that he scored points on something that is actually saying nothing at all. So I'm with you there.
Yeah, well, yeah, he uses he plays with the word know and knowledge.
Right.
If you want to do with that, just say impossible means that logically and reasonably it can't happen.
Okay.
Well, but what he's doing there is he's trying to shift the burden of proof. And once he gets you to admit that, then he puts you on the defensive, saying, "Well, how do you know that? How can you prove that?" And then it's also a misunderstanding of atheists, because once he admits that you can't be certain, then he says, "Well, then you can't be an atheist, because everyone knows atheist means that you're sure there is no God." So,
Okay.
so that's why it's a basic.
Damn, I thought I had one on this one.
Well, and you might, but using that in kind of an argument or a debate situation, then you have to start proving your claim and supporting it.
Honestly, I wanted to. I've done the position that you're holding pretty much every time I talk to anybody. This was kind of new for me, but I thought I had it and I didn't. So.
Well, and I'm not.
Thank you for setting me straight.
Well, and I'm not saying you don't have it, but it definitely changes the dynamic for sure, because he still needs to demonstrate that the God he believes in is real, and he hasn't met that burden of proof. So by kind of distracting you from that subject, it kind of throws it off the rails, I would say.
Yeah, I think my anger at how they play with words so much just makes me want to just shut it down. But I think you're right about what you're saying. It probably would just be twisted around back on me.
Right. See, the trap that I would avoid falling into is that a lot of times atheists come at these weirdly philosophical arguments thinking, well, that's dumb, and I can just show everybody that that's dumb and dismiss it. And the problem is they wind up saying things like making assertions that most secular philosophers even would warn them to stay the hell away from. And there is a bit of a responsibility if you want to start going up against guys like Eric Hovind or even Ken Ham, who I thought was a miserable failure.
Whether I would ever have a chance to go up against them. I would never meet them or anything.
Right. But I mean, it's not always just as easy as saying, well, yeah, I do know that, because you can wind up getting wound up in a bunch of logical stuff that doesn't make sense from your end.
So I'd be playing right into their heads.
In a way, yeah. I mean, that's part of what presuppositional apologetics is trying to get you into. And by the way, if I could just make a small plug, 3 weeks ago, that we had the second online conference for Free Thought Blogs, FTBCon 2, and I did a panel with Justin Schieber, who is on Reasonable Doubts podcast and is a pretty heavy-duty philosopher himself, and also Dan Linford, who's also a philosophy student. And we talked presuppositional apologetics to death there. So if you look up FTB...
I'd like to hear that.
Yeah, if you look up FTBCon 2, there's a big schedule where you can find the video somewhere. And if you can't, just shoot an email to tv@atheistcommunity.org and I'll send you the link.
Okay. Hey, thanks a lot, guys. I really like your show. You guys are great. You already know that, so I'll see you later. Talk to you later.
Okay. Thanks for calling, Justin.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Justin.
All right. Thanks. Bye.
Osiris in Chicago.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, how you doing?
Hi.
I'm all right. Kind of a little nervous here, first time caller. First of all, I want to thank you guys for the show. It's been very helpful to me.
Glad to hear it.
But there was an author that very instrumental in me becoming an atheist.
Mm-hmm.
And but you got Russell and I think Matt, they kind of like dismissed this author as like a hack.
Okay.
And they said that her work wasn't scholarly.
Okay.
And so what I wanted to know was, well, I have several questions, but the first question is, how do I determine what is scholarly?
Well, who's the author?
Acharya S.
Okay. Being scholarly is more than sort of an assertion of authority from some person. If you wanted to find out what the current state of physics was, one of the first things that you'd need to do would be to figure out what are the mainstream peer-reviewed journals of physics, and figure out what the general consensus view is. In general, you'll find that most of the major discoveries in science are presented through scholarly journals like this, where not only do people publish their ideas about what's new, like for instance, Einstein published his ideas about quantum mechanics and relativity in some very famous papers in German journals. But also, once they get into these journals, a whole lot of other scholars who are well established in the field will peer review it, which means that they will look for flaws and inconsistencies and rip into this stuff and say, oh, look here, this guy is saying he has a perpetual motion machine, and there's a major problem with that. The history is not a hard science like physics is, and so it's more difficult to come up with testing for historical claims. But there are still historical standards and peer-reviewed history journals and professional consensus on the kind of thing that happens. I'm not a historian, and I cannot make my own personal claim about whether Acharya S. Is a credible scholar. But I do know that everything I've read from mainstream historians say that Acharya S., who is claiming that it's provably true that Jesus is a mythical figure who never existed and is cobbled together from older myths like Mithras, and I think Ra is in there, I forget.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is made up or extrapolated from stuff she read that she didn't really understand. I am not in a good position to make my own judgment about her, but I do not, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm not aware that Acharya S. has even an actual history PhD.
Does that matter?
Yes and no. If she had a history PhD, it would say something about her ability to go through mainstream channels and fight for this stuff within the context of what people already understand in general about history. I'm not ruling out the idea that a person without a PhD in physics could discover and invent something amazing that would turn things on its head. I'm just saying that it generally doesn't work that way, and if you find that most of the mainstream scholars in a particular field disagree with or dismiss a particular source, it doesn't mean that it's definitely not true, but you might be better off reading that primary material and hearing what they've got to say about her instead of just calling up some layman on a TV show. You see what I'm saying?
Okay. Well, I'm excited about Richard Carrier's book supposed to be coming out.
Yeah, I mean, Richard Carrier, I think, is generally a well-regarded scholar, but I don't know. I think he is sometimes controversial, but yeah, I mean, I would definitely take him over Acharya S.
Okay. I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
What I don't understand is that, there's like a lot of forgeries and interpolations in the Bible, and it seems like when you guys go up against these Christians, that you guys don't really go in on them about that.
Can you give an example?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like that. Like most, well, I don't know if it's true, but I heard that most of Paul's writings are forgeries.
Sorry, what was the question?
Most of Paul's writings were forgeries.
Yeah.
I don't really know anything about that. I mean, I don't even think you have to go as far as to say that Paul's writings were forgeries. The guy never met Jesus except allegedly as a ghost. I mean, even by his own accounts. So, I mean, I don't care whether a guy named Paul wrote what Paul said or whether some other guy wrote what Paul said. Either way, it's not a particularly reliable way to find out what really happened. When you got this guy going around saying, "Oh, I was blinded, and then I talked to Ghost Jesus, and he set me straight." To me, this just, even if you take the story at face value, it just smacks of a guy who is sort of piggybacking on a popular religion to get attention. And he was incredibly successful about that. He introduced a whole bunch of new rules and standards that were in no way conveyed in the first four Gospels.
Okay. Well, what about? I heard that Matthew, Matthew, John, and Luke are all copies of Mark.
I don't think they're all copies of Mark, but I would recommend that you read Who Wrote the New Testament by someone whose name escapes me, but you'll find it on Amazon.
Yeah,
Do you know?
I don't recall off the top of my head. My really limited understanding is that they weren't copied, but they kind of had the same primary source. Right. And so there's a lot of similarities, but it wasn't one to the other.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
I think we're going to have to move on to another caller, but thanks for your questions. And, I recommend that you do some background reading on Acharya S, because I find that I learn the most when I step outside my assumptions and go looking for sources on the internet specifically for people who disagree with the position I want to take as an assumption. Anyway, good luck.
Oh, all right.
And really just look at all the sources that you could find if that's your area of interest. Is look to see what she says and compare that with what other historians and theologians say. And really all you can go for is consensus.
Right.
Is kind of a broad consensus as you can.
Anyway, thanks for calling.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks, Osiris.
Evelyn in Louisville.
Hi,
How are you?
Hi.
I'm fine. I just recently abandoned the Christian faith, and
Did you know there's a very active Louisville Freethinkers group?
I'm sorry, what?
Did you know that there's a very active Louisville Freethinkers group?
No, but I need that information.
You should check them out. They're on Facebook. I believe they're Louisville Freethinkers or something obvious like that.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to ask if you guys have ever dealt with full preterist.
With what?
Full preterist.
I'm not familiar with that.
No idea.
Okay, I've kind of evolved in my thinking and my growth and everything, and full preterism was the last stance that I had before atheism. And it's where they believe that the end times occurred within the first century.
Okay. What does that mean? Because I don't remember everybody dying in a fireball at that point. So what do they mean by end times?
They believe that, and this is part of something that still kind of gets me, but they believe that a lot of it is a metaphoric apocalyptic language.
Okay.
And the thing that bothers me the most, the reason that I came away from the Christian faith is because it goes completely, the God of the Bible goes completely against my own moral standard.
Absolutely. I think that's that's true of any thinking person.
At the same time, I am kind of perplexed by Christ prophesying that the stones would fall from the temple and that it occurred within that generation.
What? Do you have the specific prophecy on hand?
It's in Matthew 24.
Okay. What does it say?
It says, "Not one stone will be left upon another."
Well, that's pretty vague. I mean, that could happen at any time.
Well, further down in the context, it talks about it would be that generation.
Okay. So
I mean, the thing is I just wanted to know if you guys have ever talked or kind of debated with a full preterist, because even though I think it's all a bunch of crap, to be honest with you, I still think that if the majority of Christians held that position, they would have a little bit more validity.
I doubt it. I mean, I haven't really read very much about what you're saying, but I can tell you that a lot of Christians will go very far to count the hits and ignore the misses. If something happened within less than a century, they will claim to be amazed by that and say, "What an amazing prophecy." But then there are other Christians who will take other parts of the Bible and claim to be equally amazed at something that happened 1,500 years later and vaguely sounds the same as something Jesus said back then. And if they find something that Jesus said that hasn't happened yet, they'll just say, well, that's still to come true. So I don't put that much stock in when they manage to cherry pick one individual thing they said that sounds a lot like something that happened some unspecified amount of time later. Because I mean, I can say,
think they have. I'm sorry.
Every year there are so-called psychics who make hundreds of predictions about what's going to happen in the coming year. Some of them come true just by virtue of the fact that nobody is ever really 100% wrong in making stuff up.
Yeah, and really within my thought, even if it does have a little bit more validity in my view, I still see that there still could be an explanation for it, because there could be a possible possibly that they wanted to start controversy and civil war within the groups. But anyways, that's a whole,
Okay.
that's going way beyond what you guys probably have time to talk about and everything.
Yeah, I think that you shouldn't necessarily feel like you have to find an explanation for the fact that somebody said something and it happened later. I mean, you know, a lot of times that is just, well, that was a lucky guess. It doesn't always need a much deeper explanation than that.
Well, and as far as the preterist goes, I'm not real familiar with that, but it does sound a lot like what Russell was talking about earlier about Harold Camping saying, well, the world did come to an end. It was just a spiritual ending. You know, the end times occurred in the 1st century, but apparently we didn't notice. To me, it sounds a lot like, well, we have to come up with some way of explaining this contradiction. So,
yeah, they have the view that it's a covenantal end.
Okay.
Okay. So,
well, we're almost out of time. So,
Okay.
But do check out Louisville Atheists and Freethinkers at louisvilleatheist.com.
Okay, thank you.
All right, see ya.
thanks, Evelyn.
And say hi to Ed Hensley for me. Let's see. Sorry, we are almost out of time. We got Walt here in Austin. Wait a minute. No, we don't.
Well, that was fast.
Andrea in Illinois.
Hello?
Hello,
Hi,
Andrea?
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Yeah, we're almost out of time. I'm really sorry for saving you to the last minute, but
Well, I called in at the last minute.
okay. What's up?
I just think that it's really weird how people can be delusioned into thinking that God is real and that everything in the Bible is real. And I think that they just have a hard time accepting that they've been lied to, that they really don't honestly believe it. They just don't want to believe that they've been lied to their entire lives and that so many people believed it.
That might be part of it, but I think people do sincerely believe, and it's sort of like Ray Comfort saying, well, you atheists really do believe in God, you just won't admit it. I guess I'm not prepared to say you really don't believe in God, you're just afraid to be considered stupid. I think I wouldn't go that far, I guess.
Maybe not all of them, but I think a lot of them just don't want to admit that they're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's certainly possible, because you get imbued with religion at a really young age before your reasoning powers kick in, and that can be a pretty strong emotional.
Yeah, 'cause I can remember being 6 years old and having questions about religion. Those are always baffled me.
Yeah. I think
so. I just think a lot of people don't want to accept the facts, and they get confused with like theories and saying, "Oh, well, evolution is just a theory." They're just confused because, like, the Big Bang is just a theory.
Yeah.
It hasn't been proven.
Well, we are out of time now. Thanks for your call, though.
Maybe you can call back in next time, when we have a little bit more time.
I will definitely try to call back next time.
All right,
I would love to chat with you guys.
All right, thanks, Andrea.
And that's our show. Thank you very much, John, for being here.
Thanks, Russell.
Thank you to our crew. We'll see you at El Arroyo, not Threadgills on 5th Street. Bye.